Hey, what's up, everybody? I am Tommie Earl Jenkins, and welcome back to Joy to the Word, the Death Stranding Edition, Episode 2. This is the second of a 10-part series where we will be delving into the world of Death Stranding via the character interviews. Now, as I've said before, this is really a chance for those of you who've played the game and also for those of you who haven't to hear some of the backstory and the in-depth information on how some of these characters have come together, and how some of these relationships were also forged, as well as the history behind Death Stranding, and how some of these characters pretty much just came to be in their existence. Now, in this episode, we will be covering the interviews given by Deadman, masterfully portrayed in the game by the incredible Guillermo del Toro, and voiced by the equally talented Jesse Corti. I love this character. He's quirky, he's mysterious, and sometimes strange, in, of course, the most endearing way. I really feel for him and his somewhat sense of loneliness, if you will. Now, there are 7 titles that we will explore in this episode, and the titles of these interviews listed in this section are Bridge Babies, BB Echolocation, Fear as Pleasure, No Blue in the Inverted Rainbow, Human Sacrifices Under London Bridge, What Became of Deadmen, and Discovering America. Now, with that said, let's crack on and see what Deadman has to say in his interviews. I'm going to get my trusty second pair of eyes on here. So just a little bit about Deadman, just so you know, because all of these interviews are going to be from his point of view. It's all about him. This whole section is just covering him. He is a main character in Death Stranding. He appears to be involved in the medical field for bridges, and most of you probably know that, but if you don't, you will certainly find that out. He is an artificial human, created from a combination of cadavers and stem cells. It is also known that 70% of his body was harvested from cadavers, while the remaining 30% was grown from pluripotent stem cells. He was originally a coroner at some point. His personality traits, he's known to be affable and well-meaning. However, he is ashamed of his nature as an artificial human, calling himself Frankenstein's monster. Now, this has instilled a great deal of loneliness in him, and he reaches out to Sam as a result. This information you can find on Wiki. There's a lot of information written out on the internet, also on the Kojima websites or in the Death Stranding websites. There's a lot of information. All you need to do is type it in and search it. So this is some of the information that I've also collected to go along with these interviews for us to have a little bit of a discussion. Moving on to the first interview from Deadman, which is entitled Bridge Babies. It was done 1 year ago, took place at Bridges HQ. And Deadman states, "Look, I'm kind of new here at Bridges, so I don't know if any of this will be useful to you. Still, I'm happy to talk about BBs if that's what you want. They call me Deadman on account of my familiarity with the dead. Get it? We've always been on good terms, you see. I used to have regular little chats back when I worked in the morgue. Anyway, that's also the reason I work on BB maintenance and research, to learn more about those who are no longer with us. But I digress. Fact is, BBs were already being issued to our forces in the field before I joined Bridges. What's more, research into the little guys had already been conducted long, long ago. But no one took the plunge and put what they'd discovered to practical use. Still, what that did mean is that when Bridges wanted to build our own BBs, most of the work has already been done for us. We just needed to follow the instruction manual, so to speak. Which isn't to say that we have any idea how they work. Not how they can detect BTs or how they can connect this world to the other side. We still have much to learn about our little friends, but one thing is certain. Their continued study will lead us to a greater understanding of the Stranding and of life and death itself. That much I can assure you. Well, I think that's about all I have to tell you today. Hopefully, I'll have something new to share next time we chew the fat. See you around, I guess. So you can get a sense of there's a humorous side to him as well, but also something that is incredibly endearing about him. Um, Talking about bridge babies, for those of you who don't know, also known as a BB, which I have right here, my very own BB in its pod. They're fantastic. But just so you know, what a bridge baby is an unborn fetus that has been taken from a still mother to be used as equipment by bridges operatives. Now, according to Deadman, there's been no record of a BB that has remained in service for longer than a year. So you get the sense that they're only used for a certain amount of time and then kind of disconnected or taken offline or something, or put out to pasture, so to speak. But they're kept in these portable pods which simulate a womb of a still mother. And still mothers are brain dead mothers sustained in capital Knot City ICU. So I get the sense that they have these brain dead still mothers that they keep in the ICU, and it's their babies that are born that are connected to them that they use. It gets very, very, very confusing. And I noticed, did read that the first recorded mention of BBs and BTs relates to a cesarean section where doctors tried to save a 7-month-old fetus suffering from bradycardia. Now, bradycardia is is something that happens when the heart rate is slow or irregular, or has an irregular rhythm to it. And during this operation, a surgeon apparently accidentally touched the umbilical cord, which connected the baby to the world of the dead, thus laying eyes on a BT and causing a void out. So that was the very first mention of BBs and BTs when this happened. I'd be interested to hear everyone's thoughts on that, because I just thought it's just incredibly interesting to understand how these babies were put into these pods to simulate the still mother's womb, and how they're connected, and by touching the umbilical cord, its connection to the other side, and how all of that is all is all connected. It is the strangest thing. But I suppose once you really think about it, you kind of can start to understand how it all works and how it was used to help Sam and help get the chiral network back online, and trying to get the UCA back, rebuild it. It was the president's part of her plan, the Reconstructionism of America. So very, very, very interesting. So yeah, do some more research and look up all the history about the BBs and the experiments that they were involved in. Let me know. That's your job. Moving on to the next interview by Deadman, which was also 1 year ago and took place at Bridges HQ. BB Echolocation. And Deadman states, dolphins use a sensory mechanism known as echolocation to keep track of both their fellow pod members and any potential prey. As the name suggests, they produce sounds which bounce off objects and return as echoes, allowing them to get an idea of their surroundings. Interesting and of itself, of course, but what I find far more interesting is the recent research suggesting that BBs use a similar method to detect BTs. Now, as you know, BB pods are designed to mimic the conditions inside a human womb and are key to preserving the BB's connections with this world and the next. Well, recent research now suggests that BBs are capable of producing something not unlike a dolphin's sound waves. These pulses travel through the amniotic fluid and out the other side, bounce off BTs, and return as echoes, allowing a BB to ascertain the location of threats. Pretty cool, right? So, in discussing the BB echolocation, the ability for the BB to produce sound waves that mimic dolphins, allowing them to know the location of a BB. That's why I feel everybody should have a BB. When you're walking through the world of Death Stranding, knowing that these things exist, having a BB is absolute protection, because it can detect danger and sends out, I think it's interesting that it sends out those sound waves to bounce back to let you know that a BT is near or there's some form of danger. And if you've played the game, this little guy can start to cry, and it does give you anxiety, and you try to rock it and calm it, but it's it's there to warn you, to let you know its connection to the other world. Also, incredibly interesting that how much of this plays into the world in which we live in, and how this world of Death Stranding connects to it in so many ways. It's pretty crazy, absolutely crazy, and fascinating. Very, very, very fascinating. So let me know your thoughts on BB echolocation. We had a little discussion on the last episode during the premiere of that. I was able to be on when it launched, and so I was able to chat with people as the episode was playing, and I have every intention and hopes of doing that for this episode and subsequent episodes after that as well. I found it very interesting to answer and hear people's thoughts and questions as the episode was playing. So it was nice to sort of do the live chatting as that went. So get your questions ready after you watch this, or if you're planning to watch it at the time, get them ready and let's have an open discussion. Let's move on. We're going now to Fear as Pleasure, which is the next interview up from Deadman. This was done 3 years ago, and it took place also at Bridges HQ. And Deadman states, whether they realize it or not, the people of our fallen nation suffer greatly as a result of the separation and isolation we all must endure. That's why oxytocin supplementation is so vital. However, not all of us require it to survive. In fact, recent studies have shown something very interesting indeed. An increase in the number of people who regard fear not as a stressful experience to be avoided, but a pleasurable one to be sought out. In humans, the amygdala regulates the emotional responses to fear and pleasure inducing stimuli. Some scientists theorize that because these contradictory emotions are processed by the same region, we may have the capacity to convert one into the other. Conversely, were the two governed by different parts of the brain, such a transformation would be impossible. Now, in an age when threats such as BTs, timefall, and terrorism abound, could the ability to experience fear as pleasure serve as a useful mutation or an adaptation even? I don't see why not. Now, very, very, very interesting indeed. Because I did not know this. Some of this stuff is, like I said, it's all new to me. It is information I did not know, but information that I truly, truly welcome and enlightens me and helps me understand so much more about the story of Death Stranding. Now, taking this interview, Fear is Pleasure, here we talk about fear not as a stressful experience, but something pleasurable to be sought out, as he states in his interview, not something to be avoided. Amygdala. Now, amygdala, if you don't know what that means, is defined as an almond shaped mass of gray matter inside each cerebral hemisphere. Amygdala is primarily involved in the processing of emotions and memories associated with fear, considered to be part of the limbic system within the brain. So, because fear and pleasure share the same region in the brain, it could be possible, as Deadman states, to convert one into the other. And you kind of ask, well, why would you want to convert one to the other, whether that's fear to pleasure or pleasure to fear? And I don't know if it's the question of whether you want to do it. I think in some cases, I thought about this, and I felt like I hit something. I'm going to have a little sip of water here. So I thought about it, and I came up with this example, wondering if it is indeed exactly what they're talking about. So let's take physical attraction. So when you fancy someone, or it's a very British term, when you like someone or you're interested in someone in a romantic way or sexual way, you have that desire towards someone. I suppose that there is an element of fear when you want to pursue someone, but it is the fear that prevents you, and at the same time, there's the element of pleasure and excitement at the thought of being with that person physically. So I suppose therein lies the sort of juxtaposition of, fear as pleasure or pleasure as fear. The emotion, can be so intense sometimes that fear can be converted to pleasure as you move, I suppose, to the next level. So does it mean that fear and pleasure can coexist in some form or another? It does state that they are occupied by the same regions of the brain and being able to convert one to the other. So, and I hope I've explained that clearly with that example, because that was the one thing that I could sort of think of, is that falling in love with someone or being with someone in such a way that you get that rush, that sensation of excitement and euphoria, whether that's just being with them or physically being with them in a romantic way or a sexual way. You're so heightened that there's the fear of, oh my God, what's going to happen? But at the same time, the excitement and the pleasure that you feel at the same time. So I feel like they can almost coexist. They might be like ships passing in the night. I don't know, but that was the kind of thing. I thought the title itself really had something to connect to people. Fear is pleasure, because how do we see it? How do you see it? So that moment when your heart races with excitement and fear of the unknown, but the whole experience is somehow still incredibly pleasurable. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to hear. That was an example. I'm sure the same could be for going on a roller coaster ride. Now that I think about it, I love roller coasters and I hate them at the same time. I love the idea of them. And when I've been, forced myself to get on one, it's the only thing that ever worries me about roller coasters. The fear is the drop. Now, I know, for all intents and purposes, nothing is going to happen to me, knock on wood. But it's the exhilaration. There is a pleasure of getting on that roller coaster. I know I've been to California Park, and the Incredicoaster there has one major drop. You sort of go at supersonic speed when you take off, and you go up the slow climb, and your heart is just racing because you know what's going to happen. In this case, you know what's coming. And so there's the fear, and there's the exhilaration and the pleasure at the same time of on going down the drop, and of course going through the loop and everything, and then the everything is just racing within you, and all you can do, I know all I can do half the time, is laugh through it, scream and laugh. But I suppose that is a similar thing. So let me know what you think, and maybe let me know some of your examples of what you think fear as pleasure is, and how that works. Very interesting. Very interesting. Let's move on. So we're heading now on into the next interview, which is No Blue in the Inverted Rainbow. Once again by Deadman. It was 1 year ago and takes place at Bridges HQ. And he states, "We humans are complex, multicellular organisms. 60 trillion cells inside each one of us, they say. How many of these cells need to die for us to consider a person dead? Are there any cells in particular which determine whether a person is alive or dead? These questions are academic, of course. The exact point of death can't be calculated using cell counts. On the other hand, no one can deny the existence of degenerative diseases that gradually destroy more and more cells, leaving their victim effectively half dead. And what about me? Most of my organs have been harvested from other people. They still work, of course, but could their original owner have been said to be alive? I really don't know. Incidentally, have you ever heard of a fun little experiment they once did with roundworms called C. elegans, or elegans? These creatures are notable for glowing bright blue when exposed to UV light, but only when they die. It seems to be a reaction from the anthranylic acid within the organism, and it's known as death fluorescence. Yeah, that's right. Blue is very much the color of death, it seems. Can it therefore really be a coincidence that there's no blue in an inverted rainbow? Timefall strengthens an area's connection to the beach. This is something to do with chiral particles becoming excited, I believe. In spaces connected to the beach, electromagnetic waves with a blue wavelength can travel easily through the seam, leaking out onto the beach. Some people think that's where the blue from the inverted rainbow goes. Who knows? The fact that blue has a strong connection to death, though, that much seems pretty inarguable. And with that, I will say that that is probably very true. I think the idea that blue is a color connected to death. Could that be why when people die, the skin turns blue? When people have loss of air and are, losing life, they turn blue. I absolutely believe that blue can be the color of death. Without a shadow of a doubt, I've seen it. In a lot of things, when things die, when plants, organisms, things that are alive have that loss of life, and the color that drains, that life color drains, and the blueness comes in, and that blue can be of probably many shades of blue, depending on what the situation is. So yes, I will definitely agree that their blue is the color of death. Now, with regards to the inverted rainbow, as the title states, there's no blue in the inverted rainbow. So an inverted rainbow, I looked this up and wondered what that was. I'd never really had no understanding of the inverted rainbow, nor have I actually been fortunate enough to see one, and wondered if it was a myth or if it was just something that does exist. So this sparked me to look up an inverted rainbow, also known as a circumzenithal arc. That's circumzenithal, circumzenithal arc. Which I come to discover that they aren't actually rainbows or known as rainbows. They are related to the halos that you see around the sun or the moon, which are caused by ice crystals. So, in other words, rainbows happen when sunlight refracts through raindrops, and circumzenithal arcs, or inverted rainbows, happen when sunlight refracts through ice crystals. Also, to note that the colors in the circumzenithal arc are much purer than the rainbows, because there's apparently much less overlap in the formation. So there must be a much more definedness between each color palette in the arc versus the rainbow, which tends to have that sort of, I guess there's a blending between each color. So that'd be interesting to be able to see that. So I look forward to someday maybe actually seeing a circumzenithal arc. But very interesting, because it feels like it's like a unicorn, except apparently this actually does exist. And unicorns exist too, don't get me wrong. I'm a unicorn, so yeah. So listen, feel free to investigate that further and let me know what you find on that, because I thought that was incredibly interesting. And also the fact that there's no blue in it. So does, in the inverted rainbow in Death Stranding, there's no blue? And is that something that is taken because it is connected to death? And is it something that is only seen when I've really got to play this game again. I've really got but I'm going to wait to the director's cut, hopefully, and play this game again and really look at some of this, So for all of you who've really taken the time during the course of playing this game and spending all those hundreds and hundreds of hours on it, I applaud you, especially if you've taken time to explore the landscape and every little nook and cranny and did every mission and everything like that. That's incredible. So you probably were enlightened by a lot of this, and and you've probably read these interviews and stuff as well. So Uh, I'm interested to hear all of your thoughts and comments on this. Um, the fact that Blue has a strong connection to death, he says, that much seems pretty much inarguable. And I think we kind of just covered that, where I said I definitely believe it's pretty clear that Blue has a connection to death in that sense. Um, but yes, so let me know your findings on that. I'm interested to figure out what you thought. And did you know about the circumzenithal arc? Did you know that's what it was called, and the difference between the rainbow, between the ice crystals or through raindrops? Um, Let me know. I'm sure there's some scientists out there watching. So feel free to enlighten me and enlighten everyone else who has been a part of this. Thank you for that. Yeah, interesting. So let's go ahead and move on to the next interview, which is Human Sacrifices Under London Bridge. It's an interesting title. From Deadman, of course. This was 6 months ago, it's listed as, and took place at Bridges HQ. Human Sacrifices Under London Bridge. So Deadman states, before I joined Bridges, I watched an old movie called My Fair Lady. It was about a flower girl, Eliza, a real cockney from old London. She meets a professor, and he trains her to speak and act like a high-class lady. Anyway, I heard that My Fair Lady might have something to do with London Bridge. You know the song, right? They start out trying to build it back up with wood and clay, and then they finish with gold and silver. There was a reading of the film that said Eliza symbolized the bridge or something along those lines. But that reminds me of a far more sinister theory, that the fair lady in that song is actually an immurement, a sacrifice, buried alive in the foundations of the bridge to keep it standing. God only knows if there's any truth to it. Oh, and have you seen The Shape of Water? It's another movie with a heroine named Eliza. But this Eliza can't speak. She's mute. But it's not about teaching the girl to behave properly. It's just a good old-fashioned love story. If you get the chance, you should definitely check it out. I like that because I thought that was endearing. And coming from Deadman in his interview, we all know, and if you don't know, Shape of Water is a movie directed by Guillermo del Toro. I think Academy Award winning. And it's a brilliant movie. I absolutely loved it. So I would also highly recommend, in his words, if you get the chance, you should definitely check it out. Now, Human Sacrifices Under London Bridge. So, what I found interesting was talking about immurement. And I think I'm pronouncing it right. I could not be, but immurement. Immurement. And the reference to London Bridge. So I looked it up, and so there was a hypothesis that the song referred to burying, perhaps even alive, although immurement is a form of imprisonment, usually until death, in which a person is sealed within an enclosed space with no exits. So it's a little different than being buried alive, where the person or the victim typically dies of asphyxiation. Um, Whereas this, I got the sense that they're buried almost like within a tomb, and maybe buried's not the right word, but I suppose it is. But they are enclosed in a space, so it seems like it's a space that lets them move around, possibly, and there's no exits, but you are sealed in an area where you will basically die of starvation. Uh, and it seems different to, you know, versus someone being buried alive. As in, I put it in a coffin or in a box of some sort, and then buried in a ground. You know, where you're confined in a space where you can't actually move. Um, Look, to be honest, none of it's good. None of it's good. I wouldn't want to be buried alive. I wouldn't want to be in this immurement situation. To be fair, in any way, shape, or form, uh, I'm not claustrophobic, but I think the idea of knowing how how frightening is that? The idea of knowing in whatever capacity, whether you're buried alive, you know, in a coffin, or whether you've been, you know, sealed in a vault with bricks and no way out, you know, just in a space, walking around, basically walking, and you know, to your death, you know, because it's imminent, isn't it? It's inevitable that that is going to happen. And so that's that, and then maybe I would die of give myself a heart attack out of fear or something. I don't know. We might be coming back into the fear and pleasure thing. I don't know. But it's interesting. But not, like I said, none of it would be a great way to go. Um, but I think it's interesting because he's saying that, you know, maybe he thought it made the comparison with the song, um, and how it felt like. I mean, if you ever look at the lyrics to London Bridge is Falling Down, read the lyrics, Google it, have a look at it, and see what it means. And I kind of understand what he was referring to a little bit in terms that, you know, was My Fair Lady, even though it has nothing to do with the movie, but My Fair Lady is what it says in the song. Um, you know, is that about someone being buried alive or anything like that? I don't know. Once again, I throw it back out to you, and if there's any information or anyone who knows the truth about that, let us know. Share it with us all. But very interesting, and also very interesting that he's chosen. I mean, having said that, Deadman is all about death, and it seems like he has these moments of, you know, things come to him, and he makes these sort of comparisons, and you things that you would never normally think about or talk about, and you kind of think, oh, that has kind of sparked a little bit of a debate or question within me. So, yeah, once again, share, and let us all know. Let's go on because we're coming to the last couple of interviews from Deadman. So this is obviously going to be a much shorter episode in terms of that, but would feel like we are still giving due to Deadman in terms of discussing all of this. So let's check out what the next interview is, which is what became of Deadman. So once again, this is his interview. It was 1 month ago, also done at Bridges HQ. And he states, I'm not connected to anyone or anything, not to my mother or the other side. Nothing. All that stuff about how I was created from pluripotent stem cells, that's just a cover story. I actually started life in a womb, albeit an artificial one. A human egg fertilized with human sperm. So far, so natural. But after that technology took over, Any organs that were absent or lacking, I got from someone else. And I've often wondered when I was technically born, given all that. The moment of fertilization? The moment I was taken from the incubator? Either way, there was nothing ordinary about it. I came into this world disconnected. No wonder I don't have a beach to call my own. Can you blame me for developing an obsession? I mean, after all, without a beach, death really is the end. Game over. Adios. Or so I thought. I've recently discovered that I was mistaken about all of that. Thanks to Lou, I finally got to visit the beach. Now, I may not have my own, but it seems that they're not closed to me after all, as long as I'm connected to someone. The beach is no more than a space between life and death. Lacking one doesn't mean you're not alive. I mean, I'm definitely alive. If anything, not having your own just means that you're already connected to everyone in this world. It's quite the epiphany, and it certainly put a great many worries of mine in perspective. So, what a journey for Deadman. Such an interesting and marvelous character. He considers himself to be Frankenstein's monster. I mean, you've seen the visual of him. He's got the scar across his forehead, and the fact that he did start out life in a womb, an artificial womb, but also as a human egg fertilized with human sperm. So his journey began, for all intents and purposes, like any normal human. So I just think that is very interesting. But then the technology of things took over. So any organs that were missing from him were got from someone else. Cadavers and stuff. So, but I do feel sorry for Deadman in some ways. But I'm also happy for him as well. He may not have his own beach, but he knows that he's connected to everyone in this world, considering that he came into this world completely disconnected in some way. So how, it'd be interesting to see how do you feel about Deadman? I think he's a very, very interesting character, and there's so much to him. And he seems to have a knowledge of a lot of people. And everything. So that's interesting to me. Yeah. There's a lot of information about him online. There's YouTube stuff from the game, but also the people have written stuff. So find out some more information and once again, feel free to share. Let's go ahead and move on to the final interview entitled Discovering America. Once again, from Deadman, 1 year ago, from Bridges HQ. And he states, "Tell me, how much do you know about America?" Not much, is my guess. After all, it was already a wreck by the time either of us was born. Still, given that the whole purpose of Bridges is its reconstruction, I thought it'd be a good idea to learn a bit more about what we're trying to put back together. I imagine that you're aware of the fact that America was founded by European settlers. But do you know the name of the very first one? The man who discovered this place. Very good. Columbus is right. But let's not give the man too much credit. He apparently went to his grave thinking that America was some uncharted Asian island. But it took another European explorer, Amerigo Vespucci, to realize that America was actually a whole new continent, completely unrelated to Asia. That's why it was named after him, you see. Now, having said that, there are those who question whether Vespucci deserved such an honor. There's a distinct lack of evidence that several of his alleged voyages to the New World even happened. Some think he lied in order to ensure that the new continent would be named after him and not Columbus. And it was a hot topic of scholarly debate for centuries. Can you believe that? If you ask me, though, it really doesn't matter. Neither of them discovered America anyway. No one did. It was here all along, and already home to a great many people, too. The notion that a European discovered this place, or anywhere else for that matter, is the biggest lie of all. Don't you think? So, in discovering America, I grew up thinking that Columbus discovered America. You know, it's taught to you in school, and not to mention that we have a holiday in his honor. So why, so then why not Amerigo Vespucci? Although the country was named after him, to be fair, but Deadman has a point. Neither of them discovered America because it was already here all along. I think that's interesting. That it has always been a big thing. Who discovered America? Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492 or whatever however the song or the saying goes. But it's an interesting debate once again when you get into it. And I did look up a few things about it, which I won't go too heavily into, simply because it's all there for everyone to look up and to see and to discover. And but it is interesting discovering America and talking about it because of the place in which Death Stranding takes place. It is America, but what we're going through. But in this story, it's almost like rediscovering America. But the physical place, already exists. It's just that it was, blown apart, from a void out, and trying to rebuild it and putting it all back together again. So interesting, but with all of that, everything that we've kind of discussed today in dealing with Deadman and everything from his point of view, I think it's been interesting to sort of take and have one person's interview, which there'll be some along the lines as we go forward into the next episodes, that you will see that there are other characters that have theirs, and some will probably have to be split into two parts for an episode because there's a lot of information. So I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, get your coffees ready for the upcoming episodes because they're going to be quite in depth, I'm sure. But there you have it. This was the interviews for Deadman. I thoroughly enjoyed finding information out about him. I hope that you have as well in this episode. And thank you to everyone who joined on the first episode and joined in with your questions and your thoughts. And thank you all so much for your support for this series, and also for your support in general. As I've said before, I can never say thank you enough. But you are all incredibly wonderful, giving, and I really, really do appreciate your support. I hope that we can continue having a wonderful time through this. I hope that we're opening doors and minds and discussing all of this as we lead up to the release of Death Stranding, the director's cut, which is out September 24th, 2021. So it's something very exciting, and hopefully this is helping everyone to keep themselves at bay until that big launch happens. Um, with that said, I'm going to say another big thank you to everyone for joining me on this episode of Joy to the Word, the Death Stranding edition. This was episode 2. I look forward to seeing you all again for episode 3, which we will be getting into some very interesting territory. And I think it is Die Hardman has a whole section. That'll be interesting. Wonder what he's all about. Who knows? So I look forward to that, and I look forward to sharing that time and stuff with you all again. Until then, you know where you can find me. My YouTube channel, Twitter at TJ84, Tommie Earl Jenkins Official on Instagram, Tommie Earl Jenkins on Facebook. You know where to find me. I'm out there. I'm always on the platforms shouting at people and giving a big thumbs up. I love your likes. I love your love. And I am sending you guys all the love that I've got. So with that said, only one thing left for me to say. Keep on, keeping on. Until next time.